What's up, everyone? I'm here with my good friend, Mohamed Hagahmed, and we are going to be talking about a case that he told me about last week that sent shivers down my spine. Mo, can you tell me a little bit more about this case?
No, I'm glad to be here. This is a case same wise I was really scared about too when I was reading about it. And this is an 11-year-old child that was in a sporting event that collapsed suddenly. And luckily for him, got CPR immediately by bystanders, and then EMS showed up to find the kid in cardiac arrest.
Yeah, kids in cardiac arrest, no bueno. So tell us a little bit more about what happened.
Yeah, so bystanders that were thinking that maybe there was a seizure-like activity happened there. So when EMS arrived, they found him like unconscious and pulseless, initiated the appropriate ACLS, and they delivered a shock after initial rhythm showed polymorphic VTAC. That was followed by epinephrine via IO route, and then they sent the child to Children's Hospital.
And then what happened next? What happened at Children's?
Yeah, that was all. I mean, sounds like a kind of a routine cardiac arrest, obviously traumatizing to everybody, the kids, the family, the paramedics. But when the child got into children's, he was already kind of moving and improving neurologically. So there was some positive side to this. So he was intubated immediately and sedated and went to the PICU. In the PICU, they were concerned about structural anatomical problems with the child's heart. So they did a cardiac MRI that was completely normal, and then genetics were consulted for the possibility of catecholaminergic polymorphic VTAC or CPVT. So it's always hard for me to say that too fast.
What? Don't make me say that 10 times fast. Could we just call it CPVT for the rest of the podcast here?
I love it. I like it. That's what we're gonna go for. Yeah.
All right. Well, tell everyone what CPVT is.
So as it turns out, CPVT is an arrhythmogenic disorder, genetic disorder, and this mostly involves genes that are encoding for protein that regulate intercellular calcium, which makes it kind of hard for the heart to kind of like beat regularly. So characterized by three things, and most of the details will be also in the post. But the three things that are important to know: first, you have a structurally normal heart. So the heart is completely normal. You don't think about any type of cardiomyopathies like HOCM or arrhythmogenic right ventricular dysplasia. The second thing, based on EKG, if this child would ever had an EKG, it would be normal. No interval changes, no long QT syndrome, WPW, things that we think about like that, and Brugada. And the last is you'll see also polymorphic ventricular tachycardia, anything that causes stress, anxiety, that elevates the heart rate, secondary to stimulants or cocaine, all these substances.
It seems so unfair that the hearts are structurally normal, the ECGs are normal. You just have to get a kid when they're bouncing off the walls and do an EKG at that time. That sounds scary as a parent to think about something like that. So can you just go briefly into the pathophysiology? It sounds like a genetic type of thing.
Yeah, it's a genetic mutation. It involves multiple genes that encode for proteins, and these proteins regulate intracellular like calcium. I mean, I don't have to get into the details in this, but you can think about those receptors that we studied and learned and memorized in medical school, like the ryanodine receptors, the CASQ2 receptors. I don't get too nerdy about this now.
Believe me, I appreciate the lack of nerdiness on that. And all the details will be in the post that people can read about if they're interested in CPVT. So what should be on people's radars when these patients present? What are some classic presentations that people should look for? Because we want people to be able to identify this quickly and get these kids definitive care.
Yeah, as it turned out, Haney, I mean, these cases have a significant family history. So the family history is key here. Up to 30% of family members have a condition that caused by this. So either they passed out, they had a seizure episode that wasn't really explained by something else, like structurally. They were worked up before in the ER or other facilities for seizure-like activities or syncope, but everything turned out to be fine. So family history here is key.
Got it. And then after you resuscitate, which I assume is standard ACLS or I should say PALS for these kids, what are the treatments that these kids will be on after they leave the hospital?
Yeah, that's very tough and tricky, as you know, because from the name is catecholaminergic polymorphic VTAC. So you have a large surge of catecholamines that actually induces these polymorphic ventricular tachycardia. So as you know, what do we give in ACLS? What we like to give? Epinephrine. Everybody gets epinephrine, right? So it's tough because we have to avoid this extra excitation. So most of these kids, when they come to the hospital and then they kind of find out about this possibility, we have to give them IV beta blocker. So beta blockade will be the ideal therapy choice. And that's not to say that we cannot do epinephrine in pre-hospitally. That's what EMS have to deal with. But unfortunately in the ED, when we get more information, we have to do IV beta blockers and also sedate with IV propofol. So the whole idea is to suppress the catecholamine surge in those patients.
And when these kids go home, what's the usual medications, or are there any, you know, AICDs that are placed? What's the typical course for these people if they're
Yeah,
discharged?
absolutely. Even before that, even if they were diagnosed initially where they're found out like, by, family history, they have to be on beta blockers. And the main choice of beta blockade here is Nadolol, so Nadolol PO. Some of them go home on flecainide, verapamil. And if that failed, so initially medical therapy is optimal. So that has to be failed first. If that failed, they go on to get an AICD. So that's going to be an implantable cardioverter defibrillator.
Wow, that's just incredible, and it sounds like one of those things that is not incredibly common. However, we have to be ready for anything that rolls through those doors and keep this differential, this CPVT, very high up there when you're taking care of kids who are very sick. Mo, that was a crazy case, and I appreciate you as always. If people are interested in reading more about this, really getting deep and granular with this, check out the show notes. We're going to have a full post on this. But Mo, I want to thank you for being here today and sharing a very, very interesting case, and glad this kid turned out okay.
I learned so much from this case, and thank you for allowing me to share with everybody else.